Enter.
I can't get these memories out of my mind. It's some kind of madness. It started to evolve. I tried so hard to let you go, but some kind of madness is swallowing me whole. Yeah.
Bonjour, Anin, NeSe Indigenicas Ojibwem, Minowa, Kevin Richard Shores, Indigenicas Jaganashi Moog, Makwadundunde, Minowa, Nin Dogichida, Gabo Babigani Kagan, Dunjibab, Minowa, Moorhead, Minnesota, Nunguminde, Chimigwech Gichimanadu, Ape Gish Bimadazi Wei Wien. Hello and hi. Here I am again, babbling on in Babylon for the people, for myself, for the universe, because collectively, utilizing this unsocial network to become social and using it for its optimal potential, instead of posting little pictures of kitties and pictures of dogs and pictures of horses and pictures of hogs, only because it rhymed. Sorry. That caught me off guard. Wasn't ready to crack myself up and choked on my own spit. Is that because I've been talking, excuse me, way too much? I've been talking way too much with not enough to say. Am I sharing? Maybe I should play a little bit more madness and do a throat clearing. But then you'll hear me anyway. I don't got one of those mics where I can mute it. So, yeah, the mic I had that muted doesn't work properly anymore. So you got to use what you got until you can get what you need. If you need it or want it, only you can decide. Are you getting what you need? Are you getting what you want? I know if you're on the reservation, you're getting minimal. If you were to generalize to today's society, it would make sense why the Native American and the indigenous of North and South America came up with the concept of zero, of nothing, for that want of nothing, but the need of Maslow's hierarchy. Was it really Maslow that like all of a sudden said, hey, this is what we need? Or do you think through the whole process of trial and error, they figured it out? So first of all, should we establish the territories of the Anishinaabe people? A little quick history lesson. And again, I apologize. I'll be clearing my throat a little bit because that's still down the wrong tube. So forgive me. So history, the Anishinaabe people, they were from the New York area up into Canada, down across east to Iowa, to the Mississippi River, and up into Minnesota, and then into Canada, and back to the East Coast. A huge area was the Anishinaabe people. And according to some archaeologists, not all of them, especially those that would refrain on going against the Holy Scriptures, because that was considered blasphemy. But according to some well-accredited archaeological professors, Michael Cremo, in his incredible book, Forbidden Archaeology, has uncovered artifacts and human remains and tools that predate any conception or the regular dogma in the belief that the Anishinaabe people came across the Bering Straits theory. And yes, I do believe that there were some indigenous people that definitely could have done that at some point of the water level being less than what it is. However, the Anishinaabe's creative stories would differ. And they would say, hey, we've been here all along. And so kudos to the Anishinaabe. I tend to believe that ideology, that the Anishinaabe have been here for a long time. But anyway, what about today? What about this moment? The Anishinaabe, or at least the reservation that they gave me my control number to, my BIA number, that number, sorry, I was just trying to find out what is it that I knocked over. Don't know. It was a something though. Anyway, so my BIA number, did they number me like the Jews? Because I think we have our own concentration camps, and it's called America. So what do we do, people, Anishinaabe? Please scrutinize what is about to occur with a certain individual and her cannabis fields, but she calls them hemp. See what occurs with that, if anything productive comes out of it at all. Because I would like to hope that it shall happen. To toot my own horn to count coup, in 2004 I gave a presentation to the Tribal Council when Irma Visner was chair, and I gave them a 2.5 hour presentation. And I told them about the benefits of growing cannabis on the reservation. And since then on Colorado, not on Colorado, but since then Colorado, within the last, I believe, 8 years, have made 5 years, have made over $8 billion in the whole marijuana industry, supposedly medical marijuana, which I am not a fan of that title. I think that they have demonized the plant marijuana intentionally so they can reap all the benefits by ripping the cannabis plant in half, calling it marijuana and hemp, when we could just grow cannabis with a high THC level on it and utilize it either industrially or in health maintenance aspect. So, what shall we do? What shall we do? Well, I call it the cannabis res solution because it's something that I have been planning, I've been thinking, I've been dreaming. My aspirations of growing cannabis on the reservation has been since 1998, when I learned about Alex White Plume. Before that, Alex White Plume of the Rosebud Reservation in South Dakota. Because when I used to live in the Twin Cities of Minnesota, Minneapolis, and I would go to the 420 rallies, and I would speak at these events, and as I got sicker and more had to utilize a wheelchair, I would do the marches and stop traffic and speak about marijuana. And then I started learning more about marijuana, and I read a book, and I learned about Ed Rosenthal. And then I also learned about Jack Hare, a friend of each other. And then I learned about the cannabis plant. Not hemp, not marijuana, the cannabis plant, which umbrellas both of those. And if you do your due diligence and you research the cannabis plant, you'll realize that hemp and marijuana are the same thing. They just have had the last 120 years to breed the THC out of what is now called hemp. Just like they breeded the giants out of us. If you're Anishinaabe, you are one of the giants. Did you know that? You were one of the giants. Because when the earliest frontiersmen and explorers came to North America and they met the Native Americans, the Anishinaabe people, they were amazed because the men and women were over 6 feet tall. When the average height of Europe at that time was about 5'2". And they came to North America and they met the Anishinaabe people, and they were men and women over 6 feet tall. And one of the first things that they did is they start having intercourse with our great-great-great-great-grandmothers. Haven't you noticed how a lot of our grandmothers are short? A lot of the Anishinaabe women are short. And every now and then you have a few really tall. But if you go into Canada, you'll notice there's a little more taller Anishinaabe Ikwe. But the French and the Europeans bred the height out of the Anishinaabe. But a lot of men are still tall. So, not only have we been bred, the cannabis has been bred. And out of all the uniqueness of all the plants around the world, the cannabis plant needs both male and female in order to produce seed. The cannabis plant needs both male and female, whereas most plants around the world have the ability to pollinate themselves, whereas the cannabis plant has to have the male and female. And so, as I learned more and more about the cannabis plant, and I learned more and more about NORML, and I learned more and more about High Times magazine, and I learned more and more about Skunk magazine, and then I started putting all of the pieces together, because the little intricate brush strokes are just that when you're so close. But when you step back and you generalize the entire tapestry, you will drop your jaw in amazement of how all of this is social conditioning by design, utilized for the manipulation of U.S. and the profiteering of the pharmaceutical, aka banker, gangsters, the politicians, the polymagicians of Washington disease. All the way back to the oil companies, which were owned by the banks. And so now this incredible plant is now being manipulated so that in order for you to go and grow this plant, you need to buy the seeds from who? From who? And are they cannabis seeds or are they a hybrid seeds? Because hemp, by what standards are you purchasing? By today's standards or the standards of 130 years ago? Because they used to pick hemp and smoke it, just like they pick marijuana and smoke it. Where did marijuana come from? It wasn't a plant that just appeared. Have you ever looked in what was it called before they called it marijuana? Hemp. So, as I realize that High Times and Normal and Skunk magazines were slowly conditioning us where there used to be a ritual. There used to be almost like a ceremony when you would take your cannabis and you would break it up and you would find a few seeds in it, and it was this beautiful, glorious bud. And it wasn't this pressed brick, chisel it apart bud allegedly from Mexico. And they condition us to look at these big, huge monster buds that have no seeds. And when we get that cannabis and we see that it has no seeds and just big, huge buds, we get all excited because it has no seeds. But what happens if we don't have no seeds? Then we have no way of growing our own cannabis. Because should we not be able to grow our own cannabis, especially on the reservation? I call it the Simple 7 solution. Cannabis Simple 7 solution. Whereas once it is agreed upon of the age of an adult who can utilize the cannabis plant, then for each age required person that lives in that home, for the first one they're allowed to grow 7 plants. The second, age appropriate, 5. The third, 3. The fourth, 1. And anyone else after that, 1 more. Because you do not need more than that in order for people to socially utilize cannabis. However, if you are someone that needs to use cannabis in a health maintenance, especially pain management, then all you do is get a permit and you get to grow more. And if you're someone who has a green thumb and you think you can make lots of money because you know how to grow it, then you buy a permit to grow it and sell it. And the market will tell you just how good you are. The market will tell you, not your ego. And if you can grow good cannabis, then you will stay in market. But then if you do have a green thumb and you grow good cannabis, then the first opportunity you would have is to sell it to the reservation at a slightly higher than fair market value and then the reservation would use it to distribute amongst the elders and for health and pain management, and then the dispensaries for the people. And so we're helping feed each other. We're working for the whole tribe. And then the reservation would test your product, your yield, and if it met all the criterias and it didn't show to have many contaminants in it, then it would be purchased. And if the tribe didn't purchase it, then you would be able to go to some of the independent distributors on the reservation. That's simple. And it has been well proven and documented, scientifically researched, that areas that have legalized cannabis has definitely showed a reduction in other much harmful narcotics. It is so sad with what is going on with the reservation right now with this so-called cannabis bust, because now there's going to be an increase in the synthetic and the medication usage. So the overdoses are going to start occurring again because everybody is afraid that cannabis stays in your system for more than 3 weeks, whereas the harsher and more synthetic drugs are only in your system for 3 days. Why is that? Why is it that your body is trying quicker to get rid of those synthetics that you put in your body, whereas cannabis remains in your system for a longer period? Maybe because it works with your body? Who knows? Do a little research. So, how much cannabis has been planted on the reservation right now? I have not been able to find out. One thing that you all may find interesting that I did find out, that there is a certain individual right now that is allowed to grow what she calls hemp on the reservation by the state and the reservation. And ironically enough, in the agricultural leasing department, the very last parcels of land to be leased out were to this individual, under the auspiciousness that it was for grazing horses. I believe it was either 40 or 80 acres she needed to graze. I think it was 4 horses. Hearsay? Maybe. Do the research. Do the research. Because will people get their comeuppance? Sometimes. Sometimes not. But are we to hold each other accountable for each other's actions? Are we? Maybe we should. Maybe we should start having gatherings when we start counting coup and we start getting new councils. I'm all about that. I'm not about storming the RBC. I'm not about going in there with violence at all. But I'm all about going there with a huge group and asking them to leave. Because that is within our rights. So, what do you want to do, people? I'm rolling for you. I think it would be awesome if we all gathered at the powwow grounds and we made our voices heard in our disdain with what is going on the reservation, and we march from the powwow grounds or the community building there, and we march to the RBC, and we demand that they vacate their position and we go for a skeleton crew shutdown. And in a sense, we somewhat wipe the slate clean, or we do an absolute chain of guard. And I do absolutely believe we need to get rid of this 4 individuals making choices for all of us. I'm okay with them staying in their position, but I would like to see 7 or 8 more people join that group and then make decisions that way, and then have checks and balances with a couple other council. So we would have the council of decisions, we would have the council of the elders, and we'd have a council of the people. And then there would have to be, of course, 3 is a magic number, but so is 4, so is 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Oh, I'm sorry, forgive me. Basic, niche, nisui, niswa, nanan, ingodwaswe, nijwaswe, nishwaswe, jungaswe, Medana. It's a magic number. Alrighty, well, I think I've babbled on and babble on long enough. Must I go on? Thank you for being here. I hope you could hear me say something that had a little bit of weight to it, that it made you ponder and it made you think, and maybe you giggled at 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 different points. Maybe, maybe not. So if anybody's ready to start the resolution, I'm here. If you're here, let's do it together. Because that's what we were taught as Anishinaabe. So Chimigwich, Apegish Bimad Ziwe Wien, Tootles.
Adverb.
It's all madness. All of it. Everywhere you look. I'm just saying, in an insane world, because we're all insane at one level or not. But are you willing to look inside? Let that ego go. Because you can't fly high like an eagle when you're hanging on to your ego. So let it go and be the light in my darkness. Because I that you're a miracle, like me. Chimigwich, Gigawabaman, and a Tootles.